Good morning, everybody, and welcome on into the Octane Thermoplastic AMA. We've not done one of these before, and we don't plan on doing one of them very regularly as we are celebrating 5 years of working on the custom set showcase. So I reached out to you guys to ask any specific questions that you have, and you guys gave me some good ones, so we're going to answer them today. And as I said, there's no need to leave more questions down below. If you do have more questions, I will answer them in comment form, but we will not be doing one of these regularly because, as I said, I do interact with you guys in the comments all the time. But yeah, I'm just going to read them out, talk through what I think, and before we get started, I think the first two ones that we should usually address are the CSS sets real? You know, the 100 Zelda sets? No, they are custom stuff that I've made, and they're mostly to encapsulate a what-if scenario where LEGO made Zelda playsets. And those are they're mostly ideas. So I know I can't build very well. I know I can't draw very well. They are mostly like, this is what something could look like if a real designer got their hands on them. And the second most commonly asked question is, of course, can I buy them? No, I do not sell these models in brick built form. However, if you're clever enough, you can reverse engineer them. And if not, I have instructions available for free, largely for a lot of the models, more and more each month. We recently had a new drop, and yeah, you can get the instructions for free over on Rebrickable, or paid some of them, and then you can source the parts yourself. And I try to make as many as available as possible, but I am but one man. But we will touch on that later. So our first question today comes from Crochet, and I did open the floor, so I did open my up to self to this. What is your job, and how do you have time to make videos? So I'm going to be a tad mysterious. I have two jobs. One I actually can't tell you, like literally as part of my contract, but the industries I work in is I work full-time in biology, and then I have a second job in the education of others, which is actually quite a mix when you compare the two of them. But as for the real question is, how do I have time for all this? The funny answer is, I don't know. I guess at the sacrifice of a thriving social life, right? Not that I'm complaining. I'm sort of built for high intensity work schedules and planning, and I do get outside as well quite regularly. So I suppose that the truth is I just made it a part of my schedule. I use my lunch breaks at work to do sketches or plan or write scripts. I'll work a few hours in the evenings and definitely weekends on the models, the designing and the filming. And I tend to edit the night before I actually upload the videos, which is why they're often a tad iffy, because sometimes I'm going until like 1 a.m, and I just want to get it done. But it is a great question. I just kind of forced the schedule into my life, and it kind of sort of dominates most of my free time. Like even like the Lego hobby stuff, like if I'm building, at the very least it's a compost, right? Although I'm saying this, staying like literally as I built the botanicals bamboo the other day, and just did not make that a thing, you know. I just did it for me, which is important too. But yeah, it sort of dominates your free time. How do I have time? As I made the time is quite frankly it, because I don't have a huge amount of free time, so I choose to use it on this. And then also from Crochet, if I could make my own video game, I assume, what genre would I do it in, and what would the characters be like? I think as most creatives do, you get inspiration from what's around you. So 3D Zelda always comes to mind as sort of like a action adventure kind of platformer, but I'm also quite dramatic. I do like my big swings and my cinematography, one of those huge like sweeping stories and adventures. So as always, I guess something with huge ambition and dramatic tension would be my choice. I have a second answer though, an older idea that isn't as cliche, I guess, for a Zelda fan. A city builder. I was a huge SimCity enjoyer, still am to an extent, and I feel there's still a gap in the market for a city builder that takes you from sort of ground zero in a more realistic way, with more complex industry and like requirements. I struggle to get into games as much like that now, probably due to my creative energy being sucked into other larger projects, like this one. And even though a game like that would kind of be punishing and kind of awful to play, I think there'd be a satisfaction in, oh, you want to build a factory, well, you need the brick, and then you need to research all the stuff. And obviously like stuff like Civ and City Skylines does this, but like I mean to like an extreme level, and I think that's been something that would be interesting. A last addition I'd like to make there is not a game, but as a boss encounter. I've been thinking about black ice a lot recently, as one does, you know, just casually on my way to work. And I feel that a multi-stage boss against a humanoid with ice powers would, one, be really, really cool with the different kinds of combat and sort of projectile weaponry that could be thrown. But what piqued my interest about the idea specifically is that halfway through the fight, you sort of break the shield of this character and they start blocking your attacks with sort of arms or different body parts, and then you're you're sort of doing like chip damage, but obviously they're sort of made of ice. So as you do damage, it sort of becomes black ice, almost like bleeding in a sense, but formed through ice under pressure, which is how black ice forms. And I like that metaphor of this growing darkness being the boss's anger, and a physical change, of course. As you form through damaging it, it's more dangerous in final form, and you can see it sort of spreading out like a disease through it, which is really cool to me. There's also some poetry with the idea of being formed under pressure and the connotations with dark and evil and how dangerous black ice is. I don't know, loose thoughts, but I think that would be really, really cool and represents a transition, I guess, not unlike Girahim and Demise, but also there's just some atmosphere to that kind of fight, and you find atmosphere is important to me. From Jacek Rosnowick, I'm saying that wrong, I do apologise. Do you think we'll get more Zelda sets, or Zelda sets I should say? Yes, I think we will get at least one more. If you want my full date breakdown on that, watch the State of LEGO X Nintendo in 2025 video that we did recently. I outline it properly and I give evidence there, but for a CliffNote version for this video, I don't know how well the tree sold. Nintendo clearly views Zelda as a more sophisticated brand. It is listed as a theme on lego.com, and the rumours, however, have not spotted anything for this year. Hylian Bricks did read an interesting point with me about a month ago now, that there's a chance that Zelda's actually referenced in the Mario Game Boy, even though that is a Mario numbered set, it is still possible. That's in the October of this year, but beyond that chance, the only sort of Zelda thing I think we'll see this year is potentially a keychain, a foam sword, or a brickhead, and keychain is really the only one there that has any reasonable chance of happening, and that's still under a 50% likelihood. I do though think we will get at least one more adult set. It's probably going to be expensive, and it's probably going to be the castle, and I'm betting on 2026 for the 40th anniversary. Maybe there'd be a full theme, but honestly, I think it's a bit touch and go at the moment. I'm pretty confident there will be a minimum of one more product, and of course, obviously, as we all know, there's lots of potential, and I've outlined that on the channel of what I'd like to see alongside my hopes and dreams. There's a potential for so much more. I think at the minimum we're safe for one more adult set, but after that, I really don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see. And then also from Jacek, how long does it take you to build the digital mocks? So long. So long. I mean, honestly, it varies. If you look at some of the streams we've done, I can whip out a castle or a random collection of Breath of the Wild materials in not in a fairly short time, and those are fairly big builds, but that is only one stage of building. And also, I didn't finish either of those models in the streams, and also they get second passes where I check stability and I add details and I change things that aren't working or add in features. I'm a very specific type of builder where I don't iterate, not in the traditional way anyway. Obviously, traditional iteration refers to the idea where you do a version, you save that, and then you edit it, like how you use computer code, you never delete your stuff. But I work in a manner more close to sculpting, where I very much do build a section, and I rebuild it, and I delete stuff, and I alter it, and I change it until I have a shape I'm about 80% happy with, and that usually starts with a mechanism or something to ground me in the scale of the model. But I don't keep my old versions of those models. I do when I remaster, but when I'm actually designing, I just iterate and iterate on the spot until I'm happy. And you never see those models next to each other because I'm like, that part changes, then I undo it. Oh, I changed the core. Oh, I'll add that piece. Oh, I don't like that, and then we delete it. I just delete as I go because I'm not good at saving my old versions. So it's a flaw the way I design, but it does result in the process looking a lot more streamlined than it is, because what you see is what you get, and I don't have to go back and change that. And I certainly don't enjoy having to tear holes in finished models. So for like when you saw a castle in that stream, for example, those sections were done, but there were still interiors missing. I had to go back and add in all the structure. I did have to redo some rooms on that one. So again, it was like a first pass, but yes, it looks like it's finished because of the way I iterate on my models. That is not your question though. Building is one stage. It's twinned, of course, with the planning. Some builds spend months in my head where I can visualize mechanisms and features and get a feel for things, how it's going to look. The bigger builds end up getting sketches as well, where I play with the composition of the model, make sure I don't forget things, and sort of make sure I've got enough figures and so on, which is usually all done in advance. And builds that spend a lot of time in planning and thinking tend to go through the building stage quicker. So because obviously I've got paper and I've got a guide, and when I draw these sketches, I can see the bricks that I'm going to use in my head to create them, which just comes with practice. So that tends to be quicker, although it's still a good chunk of time. And you remember some of these are in my head for maybe a month. Some of them are a week of sketching. Some of them are just brain intense for 3 weeks before I actually start. And that's active thinking time. I'm not like just counting, oh, I said I started it, took 4 weeks where I didn't do anything on it. No, this is like active development time where at least it's in the back of my head, and most of it is building time. Builds that are small tend to go quicker, and maybe I can do polybags in like less than a day, let's be real. But again, they still have the planning, and once the builds are done, there's still new molds, stickers, figures, the render time, box art and extra touches which often need doing, and then of course video production. None of this includes video production. Most custom sets, I'd say, average about 12 hours of work is my estimate, and that's like intense work, like not just in the background thinking. But that's just because the average of sets are small event 100. So for example, Clocktown spent over 9 months in actual development. Again, no pause breaks there. 9 months in just actual iteration or planning. The Water Temple was 40 hours of work, split either side of a 4-year dormancy, and forced me to upgrade and re-render 5 other sets just because of it. Each render takes an hour, by the way, and some customs have over 120 renders per video. And as another fun example, the Champions Art, my baby, I finished that from start to finish in just 14 days, but I was off from work at the time, it was a holiday, and I spent 9 to 12 hours on it each day with some planning days and gaps in between. So even if the timeline is physically short, like 14 days, the hours that go in are crazy. They really do consume me, which is why I spread these out so much across the year. And I do want to get more done as well, and why this whole project takes so long, I guess. Question from Vintage JB5993. You should make Kakariko. You're right, it is an important location, and I do love my village sets. There is an Ocarina Kakariko model that has been planned for Wave 6 since the beginning, but I honestly think there might have to be a second one as a one-off set between waves, because I have a couple more ideas, and honestly that Wave 6 set is a mid-budget one, so it won't be super massive, so probably need a second set to do it justice. So stay tuned, although it's going to be a while. As for this question, no. From Bricks and Games 77777, will you add all the Koroks to Hyrule Castle? Yes, absolutely. The castle is going to be packed, hopefully, and one of the things that I would be lovely to have as a reference, but also to fill space, is the Koroks. I have built some of their locations so far, but I haven't placed any of them yet. I'm thinking I'm going to save it for when the model is digitally finished, as I think it could be a fun standalone video, but there's not much use in me saying that right now, as the castle isn't exactly close to completion, is it? But yes, they're all going to be there in their accurate locations, even though that's not timeline accurate because the castle is pre-Calamity. If you're wondering, every Breath of the Wild room will be present in the castle, including the final boss room, the observatory, and the basement. And I know I could do that now because ground floor is finished. I can't because I can't be sure it's going to line up with the Sanctum until we build the Sanctum, so we're waiting before I build the Ganon boss chamber. I also do want to do a small Forgotten Foundations section from Tears of the Kingdom, as well as adding the Royal Escape passages from Tears as well. But again, that needs the observatory to be built first, but that is considerably closer to happening because the observatory we're almost there for. Also, the reception room from Age of Calamity, there's just a big hole there in Breath of the Wild where that is, so I don't see the harm in adding that because it's just behind closed doors, but I will not be adding the front gate that we see in Age of Calamity because that is not very Siege of them, to have the front door to your royal reception room right opposite your main gatehouse and only entrance. Not very Siege at all. From the Lego Ravenclaw, when do you plan on finishing the CSS? Well, I'm not exactly eager to end the party, although I won't be stretching past my end goal. The CSS has and always will remain a 9-wave project. It will finish with the last Wave 9 set. However, there has always been some flex with the addition of the memorable EX sets that we have, like the Digi and the not Digi, even the Duplo and the fake stuff and stuff like that, but also additional ones like Take Back the Sea, the extra Kakariko set I just mentioned, and so on. I have a fixed list for those, like there is a limit to how many we would do, but they are in addition to the 9 waves, along sort of mini waves. We have 2 mini waves planned that I'll talk about later. But the key for that is we will be done by Wave 9. The only sets that will be produced after the end of Wave 9 is if I'm super inspired by a new Zelda game, probably a new 3D release, or if the movie releases, I will probably do stuff for that. As for when I'll finish, I'm currently hoping that by the time the next 3D game comes out, I will be done. I would be love to make more customs for a 3D game, but I kind of don't want that to be part of this 9-wave project. I like it to be its own thing, make use of anything official Lego's done at that point. And I have to have an endpoint for the sake of the Atlas, which is the book I'm doing. And I'd like that to be the 9. I built this around the number 9. I need an endpoint, really. I've joked, ironically, about 2030. I really would not like this to take longer than a decade, starting in 2020, going through to 2030. And scarily, that is the pace we are on currently. At least, at least on the channel end. I hope it will be before that. In my head, I've been saying 2027, but that's not a fixed date, and I haven't actually done maths to work out if that's possible, especially if I spend a large portion of 2025 on the castle, which is currently where my head is. I'd still like to do Wave 5 this year, but also potentially Castle 2. So nothing's a fixed date. And 2027, me saying 2027 doesn't mean, oh, it's almost over, because that will definitely not be the end for the channel's release dates, because I'm so far ahead. It will take significantly longer for those videos to all be uploaded, because remember, I'm starting Wave 5, you guys haven't seen Wave 4. I've got 100 sets done. There are, I think, 13 that you guys haven't seen. Currently, there's content planned until August with just the sets that I've finished at this point, which just means I'm working fairly ahead. Honestly, it will take as long as it takes to get right. And once it's done, I do have other projects in mind. Nothing that I really believe you guys will be as interested in, which is unfortunate. That's cool. I kind of expected that we'd have real Lego Zelda as a theme by now, and that would be the channel's future. But that's also not sustainable and doesn't look super likely these days. I kind of assumed I'd always have this as a focus because we'd have a theme. It's not going to happen in the way I dreamed anyway, I'm sure. But this does raise interesting questions about the channel's sustainability and future. I'm not going anywhere, but we will need to diversify, I think. Just diversify a little bit, because I'm a Lego fan first, and there's more I can do beyond Zelda, and hopefully that is something that you guys will want to see by the time we get to that point. From Cara Schoenfield, that face gets me every time. Yeah, not question, just a statement. Yes, it is beautiful, isn't it? This is referring to the Legend of Lonk Breath of Fresh Air Stinkers figure that I used to advertise the post where I asked for you guys this question, and was used for an April Fool's Day. Stinkers is Blue Jet, and smelled of Sacred Gun Mech, and Imp's Ninja Mech, I think it was as well. They were a lot of fun, and they were, I think you should all have to appreciate the glory again. All these old ones are underrated, but this was done as a specific parody of the knockoff brands that steal IP, not your legitimate third-party competitors, but your knockoff brands that just steal designs, and the wave of just memeable Ninjago mechs that came out. Anyway, it was a fun April Fool's Day, and I do like this face, which was designed deliberately to be wonky, and I love using it to troll on our thumbnails. We have a couple of questions from Cara Laura, and our first one is, what aspect of designing is the most fun for you? I like solving problems, so I will say that the challenge of trying to balance the set and mock line to make the CSS semi-realistic is probably the most fruitful. I do find that balance equally frustrating at points, because it means I can't execute something to look as pretty, or I'm not capable of making it look as pretty as I'd like, or something doesn't quite feel realistic enough in stability-wise. So I guess maybe it's not the right answer to your question of what I find most enjoyable, but everything can frustrate you at different points. Seeing a model come through and be like a digital 3D spinning thing that looks like how I imagined it in my head and on paper, now that's a great feeling. This extends to the non-loader stuff as well, like my mocks like the Pyramid or Oswald conversion that we did, or even the half-finished Chinatown. It's all solving niche problems I want to get around in the Lego space or my Lego collection journey. I want a statue of Oswald. I don't like that the Pyramid has a no back. How can I do it in a fun way? How can I find a way to mix all of these buildings together while adding a custom mock layer to make this Chinatown and find a home that fits a little better than what people do with the Lego cities at the moment? And yeah, solving niche problems. And the CSS as well, solving the problem of how Zelda could work. Not the problem that it doesn't exist and I'm fixing that, no. The problem of how to execute a Lego Zelda theme in the best way. And I can say as well that I look back on the 100 sets, and yeah, there's flaws and there's problems and the art's not great, but overall I can certainly say I feel proud of that as well. And that feels good too. Just what a humongous thing to have accomplished as an individual, like on my own, but then also to keep the channel going for so long as well. Like, that's a huge dedication, and that all feels good. And I think quite often I forget and gets lost in my head where I start nitpicking, and but it does make me feel satisfied when I look at the 100, and I do, it's like the feeling of pride towards them, which is great, and not something I get hugely often. So it's a lot of fun. So I think that is satisfying at this point. I also like the storytelling on like a meta CSS level. This is a lot of fun for me, like when a project combines with each other, or I add the lore to a set that says, oh, this was delayed for 2 months because of some like small reason, but it just adds this more variety to this situation we've created. And this goes all the way down to the micro Lego, where it comes down to like micro level with fig choice and setting up certain scenarios or putting references into builds, like the Adventurers Club, if we go non-Zelda there for a second. This was a hard question, actually. It sort of sent me a little existential. I've quite literally never thought about why I build, which feels scary to think about. Maybe because I'm actually a set builder first. Like, I just enjoy engaging with that part of the hobby well, first, maybe not more, I don't really know. Who am I without building? When the limits of this project end, yeah, what's that going to be like? What's going to motivate me to build? Ooh, that is something I do not want to confront. But I guess I don't have to, because like, why do anything? Because I enjoy it. It helps me. Like, the building is therapy, basically. Not literally, it's just very therapeutic. And I guess it's true love between me and the brick. You know, what can I say? It's my soulmate. Also from Kara then, aside from Tears of the Kingdom, which game has given you the most inspiration? I think I've probably misinterpreted your question here, so I'll answer both ways. Funnily enough, I honestly would not have put Tears of the Kingdom at the top of the list as my inspiration when it comes to designing. Yes, the Tears of the Kingdom sets the most cohesive product portfolio, and I think a lot of that comes from being inspired from that world to do justice to it. But because of its connections with Breath of the Wild, I honestly tend to lump them as one era, the era of the Wild pairing. So still not my top inspiration. That would go to Skyward Sword because it's just my comfort and one of the ones I grew up with and left an impact. You got to remember that when I was being inspired to do the CSS and I was seeing these models on LEGO Ideas, it was through the lens of someone who was seeing it through these Skyward Sword Ideas submissions. That was what I was playing, and Ocarina and Wind Waker and stuff like that led me to look at those games for sort of core philosophy when it came to designing and turning Zelda into sets. But it's not by huge amounts. They're pretty equal as far as inspiration in that terms. On the other side of it, as far as which games give the most inspiration to be turned into sets, obviously that is Era of the Wild. There's just so much content there. But everything in Ocarina can be a set. As much as I dislike the fact that that is true, in terms of set quantity, like the amount of things in Ocarina that could make good sets is just astronomical. I mean, we see that in the CSS data. It is the second highest represented game after Era of the Wild, which makes up 48 of the 100 sets, which also says something. Like, if we're counting like that, then 100% Era of the Wild wins. But that would be the game that inspires the most physical content in terms of sets, and still has quite a lot in the pan as well. Like, there is not a moment from that game that does not make a good set. Largely, there are a couple of duffers, but generally speaking, everything could be something. And that is not the case with stuff like Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword, and Majora's as well. Majora's is really, really hard for set ideas. That game is interesting like that, which is a shame. I didn't expect it to be that way. But outside of which games inspire the content, most of my ideas and inspiration actually come from the LEGO side of things. I'll see a feature or a set idea and go, ooh, how could we do that in Zelda? Or wow, that's perfect for Zelda. Or how can I make that feeling I get from looking at the 2013 Lord of the Rings line and make that feeling translate to the current generation of Zelda fans that are growing up right now? It's all about those early 2010s really with me, but also modern ideas too. Like 2019 to 2022, LEGO is one of the biggest sources of inspiration because those years really changed design across the company and were such heavy hitters in every category. I don't bring it up enough in the videos, but the custom sets were largely influenced by real LEGO lines. You'll hear me mention it like, oh, this is like this or like that idea, but most of them have at least one real set or line that has influenced them far deeper than any game that brings the scenario that the set's about. At least that's the way I look at it. But yeah, 3 different ways to answer your question there. Another one from Carol Laura. Are there any set ideas you haven't been able to make work but you want to tell us about, particularly from handhelds or the less popular games? Oh, there are indeed plenty. I love cancelling things, usually way too early so I don't actually start building. I've got a couple of different ones, so I'll reel them off. Firstly, not cancelled, but The Imprisoned was originally supposed to be Twin Mold. However, these two sets have just switched places, so Twin Mold is still happening in a later wave. But yeah, I just was sick of worms, man, for Wave 4. Too many worms. So they'll happen, and I've got to find a way to innovate on that, I guess. But yeah, I'm so glad we brought The Imprisoned up because that turned out amazing. I've also talked at length about cutting the Wind Waker sort of outposts that the Bokos have, the submarine guys as well, and just general great sea filler. A lot of that was cut back from Z004. One of the other things that's a really big delay, and I really hope that this is a delay and not me cancelling it, comes in the form of one of the side projects I mentioned earlier. Zelda's known for its music, so I really want to do a LEGO video revival. Everything's actually planned for that, and I mean everything. All 100 like beat-bit tiles, the sets, the figures. I even have started design files for that. It's just the execution on how to make that central gimmick succeed, where literally the billion-dollar company could not make it work. So that's still happening. It's just delayed. It will probably be better for it. I just need to reimagine the video hook in a modern way, but that doesn't sort of separate it too much, which is going to be quite difficult to do, but it will happen. Chew Battle Pack. That's another one. Pretty awful idea, really. Glad I cut that. King Bublin was supposed to appear in the Rallis wagon, but he's somewhere else now. Link to the Past Graveyard, but using Ocarina's figures. That one was just too much terrain, so that didn't really work out. A UCS King of Red Lions and a UCS Spirit Train. Both of these were just too difficult to make work in a way that looked good, and the King of Red Lions head would never have supported the weight. Try as I might, I also cannot make the iconic Twilight Princess bridge work. I have sketch models for that too, like that one was quite far along. I just could not do it in a way that made me happy. Tried as a diorama, tried as a playset, but yeah, nope, couldn't make that happen. Shockingly, Hyrule Ruins, just in general from Breath of the Wild, have had so many chances where they've been listed as side builds and the budget's run out or I just haven't done it. It just hasn't happened yet, which is shocking. Maybe it never will. And that feels like something that LEGO will definitely do. So odd that I've managed to cut it from every set. Maybe the Guardian remaster will finally be the time from Wave 1. Digi Zelda is also still coming again too. Again, just needs the right time on that one and for me to have the right choices for what goes in each set. But it'll happen. I've done the voice lines and obviously she exists. We've got the drawings. Shrine of Resurrection. I'd love to resurrect that one. But but focusing on older games now. I do plan on having at least one custom for all of them. Some will be very small. Specifically cancelled stuff though, or things I couldn't make work. The Windfish Egg, I know it's doable. Other people have done it, not the way I wanted to do it though. So Windfish Egg got cancelled. Link to the Past Fairy Fountain, and I've looked at doing the Dark World Pyramid as well. Link to the Past is particularly difficult actually because it just appears better looking in Link Between Worlds and Echoes of Wisdom, so you would just do sets for that instead. Oh, the Helmasaur King though. I just couldn't get the mask at a good shape, although that might be possible now with newer parts, obviously acceptable enough in a way that also works for play. Like it would have to break off, but also be strong enough to wiggle him around. He's also very Frox-like, so I mean he's got the tail. I'd like to redo him maybe, but he was another one that we cancelled again, all very early on. Like they didn't even make the original 9-wave listing when we were playing around, basically. So it's whatever. The old Gleeok was originally on there, not cancelled so much as made irrelevant by Tears of the Kingdom. There's no need to do that anymore. Although there is still one more Gleeok in the showcase, I will say, but it's not Gleeok either. My Oracle games, Zelda 1, Zelda 2 plans are untouched. Same with Minish Cap. There's just no change there because generally the older the game, the less chance I actually cancel a set because there's just less planned for those games and less that would honestly work, especially when you get back to 8-bit because translating it makes it so much more difficult. So there's less chance for cancellation because I've just made better picks. The games that we're most worried about right now that I'm thinking of this and literally just hitting me on the spot, is Phantom Hourglass. There's a good chance that's been largely ignored because I did cut the Linebeck boat because it's just not iconic enough. I'm sorry, but a lot of those older games, I want to make sure there's something from every game, even if it's just a figure or an accessory pack. But some of the games do not work, like they would not sell, and that is something I have to consider because we're in a semi-realistic world, I guess. I mean, a lot of the ones I make wouldn't sell, but that's besides the point. It's still time to fix that. Phantom Hourglass can come. I think most of these ones I've just rolled off though are dead for a good reason. But parts do change, ideas form back, and one of these might come back, I guess. Of course, literally anything I labelled as delayed will get done eventually. But yeah, that is the current list of cancelled stuff beyond the stupid stuff like Hyrule Warriors, and it's like 20 Bokos in a set. Like that's just not happening. Also again from Carolora, if I had the offer from the LEGO Group to make one CSS set a reality, which would I pick and why? And honestly, that is like choosing children. That is rough. There are multiple ways to consider this question though, which means I get multiple answers. So firstly, if we're taking from the perspective of for the good of the Zelda community, like I am picking a set that I think will serve them the best as a unit, it's got to be the CMF series, right? Like if I am picking for all of you, figs are the hardest part for you guys to do in your own collection. So 16 to 12 figures with literally nothing else is a kind of sucky choice, but then you guys get to build whatever you want for them. So in that theory, me picking the CMF series makes a lot of sense. However, if we're talking about a choice for me to insert into a already planned Zelda theme, so it wouldn't be the only set on market, I'd pick Ultra Hand if they're a relevant set because that would enhance your playability. Or if we're not doing Tears of the Kingdom, there's just not enough like interaction to make Ultra Hand worthy, then Year Clan attacks, because assumingly Castle Town's going to be pretty low on the like priority for official products, and it would kind of cover ground that they wouldn't touch themselves, so it would get you a couple of good figures, but also that medieval building that we need for Castle Town. And yeah, I've got to imagine it's a pretty low priority, and it's a fun set, you know. So I think that my answer there. If they ask me to do it as a business play, from the perspective of which one do I feel would sell the most numbers, It's got to be Great Sky Island or the Tribute Castle. Ha! You thought I'd pick Lookout Landing, wouldn't you? Never. I feel pretty strongly that GSI doesn't fit any niches on the LEGO market and has appeal outside of Zelda 2. It's massable. It's got good figs too. I genuinely think that one would do really well. And obviously it's a part of Tears that everyone has experienced, even the people that love Zelda but didn't love Tears a lot. It's so key to the marketing and would look pretty that I'm pretty sure GSI is the right choice there. And the Tribute Castle is also a great pick. And I know you haven't seen this one yet, but it's a good pick for a business play because in a sense, if there won't be any more sets, it will do the numbers for the FOMO, for the figs, the iconic silhouette, and as a reference-packed centerpiece for any LEGO Zelda fan in a starved world of this kind of content. Tribute Castle I think would do numbers, even though it would be expensive. So yeah, those would be my picks from a business play. Lastly, for me, if I had to pick for me, selfishly, that is nigh impossible. Truly, is there one set that if it existed as is, I would be forever satiated? I don't think so. Would I? I don't know. Almost all of them could fulfill that. My top 15 are currently on the screen while I debate this. Fire Sanctuary is the firstborn child. It means so much to me. But without having other dungeon sets, it's not at its full potential. I kind of hope we would see some of what's in a Great Sea Adventure in real sets, so I wouldn't necessarily pick it selfishly for me, although I never think we'd see a big Octo, so maybe that's a reason to pick it. GSI would mean a Raru figure and a Steward Construct mold, and I could do a lot with that because I could make the Seas Construct set and do custom stuff with that. It would introduce so much. And it's a really special set in so many ways. It was one of the first huge ones, but also I think you guys love that one a lot as well. Is it Maz, like Monk Maz Kosher for the memories as well? Champions Art would be on here, but I already own that, so it's not really one I need them to do, and I don't think they could do it majorly differently, so I don't know. Temple and Lookout are just kind of too big. I think I'd be happy with any of the 100, if they were going to do it. But I'll settle on this as a compromise for this question. If the model is untouched, they just give it to me 100% as mine, but they mass produce it, it's GSI, right? Because I already like how it looks. It has some really useful new parts and some cool figures that I personally like and represents an iconic thing. And you think you could buy multiple of them and mod it. I think it's great. It's mid-range. It really shows that the CSS just isn't about big and expensive, right? And again, as I said, Construct Battle, I can do so much with the parts in that set, and it gets you a Flux as well, and an iconic Link outfit. I think that might be the choice. But if LEGO is giving it the treatment, like ideas, like it's gonna get a designer using my model as the base, and then they develop it to make it better, I'm gonna cheat. I'll say the dungeon system as a whole. They can pick any one of the 10 dungeon sets, or they can smush ideas from them together. And the reason I'm picking this is because it was the central gimmick, the whole main idea. When I set out how would LEGO Zelda work, the dungeon franchise was at the center of that. And I think what would be most satisfying to me would be to see a professionally designed version of my core vision come through. I mean, as long as it includes the SS Link from Fire Sanctuary in all its dual molded glory and a Lizzle variant so that we can have that head mold to army build, I think I'd really truly be happy with ever. It's got to be the dungeon builder system, I think, truly. And I know it's a slight cop-out, but genuinely, how am I supposed to choose? How am I supposed to choose? They could do the Sonya polybag and I would cry. I would cry, right? The ramble answer shows you I'd be over the moon with everything. Not that this will ever should, or ever will happen. It is just a fun hypothetical. They loan me literally nothing. I don't even think I'm worthy. That being said, if you're listening, LEGO, octanethermoplastic@gmail.com. My email is open. My email is quite literally always open for you. Winks slowly at camera. Winks again. Come on, LEGO. Come on in. Come closer. Come on. Also from Carol Laura, aside from monster heads, what new molds do you wish you could make for the CSS? Another good one. Monsters are unfortunately the biggest, but I've just been touching on stuff like the Construct Ring, which again is monster related. That'd be a big one for CSS because it does so much for the Tears of the Kingdom sets, and I also love the way I designed that mold. Still pretty niche though. The Rupees would be a really nice one. The Cuckoo was always the one I never really saw as necessary because we have the chickens, but it would be cool for sure to see a properly detailed one. The one I'm most attached to right now is my new part family I created, that being the 1x1 and 2x2 versions of the truncated prolate spheroid, which is the official name I'm giving it. This is the piece we use to the Octorok and Moctorok head, okay, that's monsters, and the business scrub body. I feel this solves a reoccurring round Zelda creature problem, and I feel like I haven't unlocked all the potential uses of it yet, so we'll see more in the future, I think. But also, one once again, it is character focused. It's another set of molds I'm just really happy with, and I'm proud of the way I designed them, and they're a family in a sense, as I said. And I see them as useful beyond Zelda. So again, that would be another choice. Locking door parts, also something I'd want to see. But excluding all that for a moment and thinking for specialized stuff, my favor would be for less new molds and more graphic design. The existing parts catalog is so diverse. You can do so much with it, as we've proven, right? With very limited new molds in the CSS outside of characters. What you can't do is replicate the things like spiritual stones, maps and charts and characters, items, recipes, diaries, Easter eggs, in-theme wall decorations. Mold budget should be used sparingly, in my opinion. Used for only the people that really need it, and not just to give everyone pointy ears. And the priority should be enriching details over new molds that sort of help to expand MOCs, but also the world, and make the Zelda sets feel like Zelda sets rather than generic fantasy sets with Zelda characters. But that would be my take, which take as you will. Maybe interesting to you, maybe not. And then last question from Carol Laura, or Carol Laura's sister maybe. Are there any other ideas for Disney theme park sets? Epcot and the World Showcase is the first thing that comes to mind. I would really like to figure out how to do that ball properly. It's been often on my list since LEGO Nexo Nights in 2016 for that one spiky slope piece that came out. If I do World Showcase with the ball, it will be in micro scale. But if I could make an almost figure scale Spaceship Earth with interior, that would be a dream. That would be amazing. I think it's doable, but I also think it's going to be a pain. I do also have a fondness for the Sorcerer Hat that's now gone. Microscale Tianas would have been great, but I feel like that's been done enough before. I kind of like putting my own flair on it. I would have done the Phantasmic Dragon, but they just did a set version of on it, and I'm pretty happy with that, so no real need for me to make changes there. Aside from that, it's all bits and pieces, really. I think a lot of the parks have been done quite well and quite a lot by amazing designers, so I'd only be picking bits that are sort of special to me and I feel collection to, and Chester really was the biggest piece for that. I worry about microscale rides that include track, which is why Big Thunder's not on this list, because I think it would look a little iffy. I don't know how to execute it properly, especially not in the same scale as I just did for Chester. I think it's Spaceship Earth that's speaking to me at the moment for that one. But watch this space. Maybe I have some more ideas. And there's other parks too, isn't there? I would love to revisit Typhoon Lagoon, because that has a special place in my heart as my first idea submission way back in the day. That was a long time ago under a different account, different name. And again, Disney was my first attempt at a CSS, so I think if I could upgrade Miss Tilly, that would be a lot of fun as well, actually, just to have for my own nostalgia. From Hylian Bricks, favourite and least favourite Zelda theory. Favourite's easy. I love Monster Maze's Triforce theory. It's just so well explained, and the secret visual of having the Triforce in the Silent Realm's Waking Water is just insane. Like, I'm so glad that he brought that to my attention. Like, that's in the game. That's just so cool, and the theory makes a lot of sense as well to me, and it aligns with, obviously, my Skyward Sword bias, but also just in general where I view the lore and the timeline in a pretty relaxed way, that it didn't feel too sort of, oh, what if, what's going on? You know, like it was quite calm, and generally speaking, I'm quite open to that. Least favourite is also really easy. I wasn't a huge fan of anything that came out of the sort of late into pre-TOTK speculation. So people went a little far, specifically with the Zonai, before we knew anything about them, like 2021 to 2022, I think I'm referring to largely. It was just a little bit odd, like it really went to people, like I was like, whoa, what's going on here? However, my actual least favourite theory is the theory that the timeline is broken, or that Tears of the Kingdom's past happens at the beginning of the timeline, causing the timeline to be broken. The director literally said it could be a new kingdom. The timeline is not broken, it's fine. It does not make 100% sense. It's never made 100% sense. And of course it wouldn't, because the geography is literally constantly shifting. And I think once you make peace with the fact that gameplay comes first, but the timeline is cool, it's so much easier. But it's not broken. Here's my headcanon. I'm happy with this, and I just don't think about it too much, because honestly I've got better things to do than pick holes in this theory, but I do like having this theory. So to me, Skyward Sword split the timeline, and Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom are in a side branch where the Zonai happen instead of the Minish. And then most of the games happen as normal in this side branch, with changes that allow Ganondorf to stay buried in the Breath of the Wild lap to still have all the references to all three timelines. There's a merge event somewhere in there, I don't really care, that brings the three branches together in this side event. They stay separate in the main, and all that stuff, but yeah, that's it. I'd also be really happy to have a new Hyrule Warriors that depicts the merging of the timelines. I know we could argue that the original one does that, but it's just kind of the sort of fan fiction I'd be like down for, and I'm pretty sure Koei Tecmo could handle it well if they had a leash on. Don't understand Sia and Lana. They were not necessary. But yeah, I kind of like that. That would be a real meme of a game, but that would be a lot of fun to have like a timelines merge. Speaking of fan fiction, Zelda musical, please, I beg, make the movie a musical if you'd like. That would be great. Please just do it for me. But back to the timeline. The timeline has a place for sure. I like that it exists. I really do appreciate it exists. But stop tearing each other apart because we view it differently. It's designed to be interpreted just like the games and their legends. I like the vagueness of it. It's like everything else that we love to debate. It's not broken. It never has been. Okay, moving on. From Johans 8352, my opinion on Tears of the Kingdom, and a couple of specific parts to tap on here. I loved Tears of the Kingdom. I don't rank the games anymore because I just love them all, and Pikmin and stuff like that as well. It's just not worth ranking. Skyward Sword obviously gets first place. But especially since Tears of the Kingdom, though, I don't rank anymore because I really can't judge it without Breath of the Wild. Because as I'll mention in a minute, I love what it does on its own, but would I love it as much without Breath of the Wild being incredible and leaving this severe impact on so many people and the foundations it built. People had issues with the puzzle system in Tears of the Kingdom, but it was actually right up my alley. Dungeons were improvement, the shrines just felt like even more insane versions of the Breath of the Wild version that just made me kick my feet in joy. You have no idea how happy I was to walk into a shrine and play Jenga. Like, that was so cool. The abilities flow so well, and while it definitely has its problem, the narrative and the core of the story had so much heart and dramatic flair, just like its predecessor. It was definitely clunkily written in places, I will say. Not the translation, just in general, because the twist with the Light Dragon is just so telegraphed. Like, trust your audience to be a little smarter than that, or leave them with the surprise. Like, it was just so obvious. But the ending was amazing, and especially with that dynamic music, everything from Gloom's approach through to obviously that, when he pulled that out and then edit, so good. So good. I had a great time with the game, especially because it was like at launch as well. I played it, no spoilers. It just hit me at the right time, I think, as well. But basically, the game swept me away. I have no disappointment at all. Things I wished for, mostly I got them. They mostly happened. But some of that enjoyment definitely comes from them cashing in payoff checks from Breath of the Wild and the goodwill it built up in its story, like such as seeing characters and areas changed is a nostalgia bait that shouldn't exist, but does. So really, I have to acknowledge that Tears of the Kingdom cannot stand as high as it does and deserves to without Breath of the Wild. And I love Breath of the Wild, so that's great. But Breath of the Wild had a more simple but more rapturing narrative, which I adore, on just a completely different level to Tears of the Kingdom. It's so apocalyptic, and the connection to the champions, and it hits so heavy in the end of the world. And I love the story in that world, and the themes of renewal in that story is beautiful. And Tears of the Kingdom builds on that, but I wouldn't love Tears of the Kingdom if Breath of the Wild didn't exist. So that's why I've started viewing them as one era together, and they are two parts of the same coin. Tears of the Kingdom has the better gameplay though. I'd play that game almost every day over the gameplay in Breath of the Wild, and it's not even that different. The surface has changed just enough for me. There's some areas that feel like a downgrade because you just get angry that there's not this cool thing there because there was before, and then that's where you start getting into that negative mindset. But the addition of the sky and depths was great. I'm happy with the depths. I like no, it's there. Like, it's fine. It does what it does. I'm not one to complain about a little grindy area like that. The sky could have done with a little more, I think, but it didn't feel as lacking to me that it damaged my time there. There's still plenty of islands and so on, and 2.5 dungeons. I just wanted something oomphy, like the GSI, but with theming. I guess a second Stormwind Dark, or like a floating sky whale, or like some of the stuff they showed off in the Masterworks as well. But yeah, I was generally speaking okay with what they did with the sky. I think it's just Stormwind Dark was so atmospheric and unforgettable. What? Dynamic music again, and that boss fight, the Wind Waker. Oh dear, so good. Stormwind Dark. Love Storm Dark. Back to the questions though. Favorite character has got to be Rauru. Love him. Remember this name, that moment is just powerful. I loved that. That was just, it hits. I shouldn't, but it does. And he's just a nice and regal character. It's really, really great. I really never connected to the Descendants, even in Breath of the Wild, and I'd rank Minoru, the new character, higher than the three of them. But Tulin does stand out, and I guess also because he's new. But I don't know, Sidon Reacher and Yunobo just have never really done it to me specifically. I don't know. It is what it is. I guess my favourite returning character just has to be Link. I don't know. I know he's blank, but he's just great, really. I don't really have anything else to say about that. The side casts are lovely as always, I guess, and seeing NPCs you knew and how they've changed is a lot of fun, but none are coming to mind right now that stood out at me. amazingly. I didn't torture the Koroks, not really, just some uncomfortable car rides every now and again where I'd accidentally attach one to a wheel or my device would go wrong and they would suffer a little bit, but I was trying my best to love them. Roger Muller asks, will you ever have a set with the Yeti characters? What about the Lanayru Temple from Echoes? I assume specifically in reference to Conde. Snow Peak is currently on the maybe list for a non-wave set. The exterior is not something I would want to waste too many bricks on because it's not super iconic, but then again, Malfoy Minor just did that, and that is mostly known for its interior as well. So if I find a way that I'm happy with, then yes, Yetta and Yetto would be in that set and be included. Not as builds, probably Eggman-esque, at least for Yetta. Don't know about Yetto, he would be interesting, maybe Donkey Kong style. But I'm still considering it. I don't know. I've already done Snow Peak. I know Yetis weren't there, but technically we've already done a Snow Peak set, which is why it would be a non-wave set. But I'd like to revisit it. It's a pretty popular location, and I feel like it would make a decent set. It's just I don't have the magic button that's going to make it work for me just yet. As for the Echoes of the Nehru Temple, this is even less likely. As well, I did love that temple a lot, and I love its score. It's got very little visual flair, and Snow Peak is just more popular as far as ice temples go. That being said, though, Conde is not off the table because the other day I had a really fun idea for kind of a ridiculous Echo set that just hits the funny set concept really of being canon and yet being something that never happened in game. It's slowly coming together in my mind, so he might not be a lost cause yet, and there are at least, this will be one of them, 2 more Echo sets coming because I've said 5 and I've only done 3 so far. Linking Brick asks, you should update some of your figures and molds to look like the official set, just as a thought. I agree in theory, but this is a difficult decision because once I do that, the Deco Tree becomes part of the custom set showcase canon and therefore part of the showcase, which doesn't fit the timeline and the reality in which these sets came to happen. Plus, I then worry about being influenced by LEGO's choices with their loader, in a sense, their official stuff, and then that meaning I don't stay true to my original vision for this project, which was supposed to be complete years ago and before we ever got official sets. Thus, what is logical for the what-if scenario that I'm creating, and that's sort of important to me. Even though we could just pretend like the Deco Tree was the first set, and then we jumped into playsets after its release, it does mess with things like the Master Sword lore, the appearance of Breath of the Wild Link in multiple sets, although it is kind of perfect that they chose to do a Deco Tree as their first set, and I literally never planned on using one. Although, remember, I wasn't entirely wrong. There was Goma, there was a sword pedestal, I got some parts right, just not a Deco Tree. I just didn't think that was on the table. So I'd love to use them, but the lore of what we're setting up and just making sure the project stays true to its original goal kind of restricts me. If we ever do modifications or expansions to real LEGO Zelda, then of course we will use the figs, especially if they do playset themes. We'll be modifying and making mocks and stuff out of that, and potentially even doing digital expansions to the waves or editing things like that. And of course we use the figs and official stuff in that because then it is the official, but this I've got to keep in its own universe. I do of course use the figs on my custom sets at conventions because what am I going to do? Use a dodgy Link figure instead of the real one when they're here in front of me? No. But that is a separate issue. I'm also aware that these rules have been bent multiple times. Z099 Ultra and Christmas set had a cheeky reference to the Deco Tree in the form of a micro build, but we're going to pretend we don't see that. That was just more so paying homage. Again, that set is canon, but dubiously so. In Z050, I used the torch design from the Ocarina version of the set in West Clock Town, and honestly, that is pretty blatant. Like, that is just me using designs that they established as good and that I would not come up with my own, and I feel bad about it every day, but I just have to move on. And then more recently in Z099 again, and also in Z0100, I used Link with golden hair. But again, this is referential and in special sets, so we're just playing along with the discrepancies. It won't make its way into the real 9 waves. I can toy a little bit with the extra sets because they're still canon, they still happened, but they're not part of the core 9 in a sense, even though they are not EX sets. Again, it's very confusing where I draw the lines. But yeah, I'm trying to avoid too much influence, which is why I haven't done it, but I do wish I could use them because my drawing really, really sucks. Kethro340 says, have you met with LEGO to maybe make a deal? Nope. And honestly, they should not make a deal with a 20-something-year-old fan about ideas. I've said from the beginning and maintained for 5 years that this is mostly a showcase of concept, what LEGO Zelda could look like, how playsets, concepts, and gimmicks could be executed. And if one of their talented designers was to take a stab at these concepts, like in theory, they would do so much of a better job than I ever have. So I really do appreciate everyone that says that they should hire me. It's very, very sweet, but trust me, they have better designers. I am not good enough. Now, LEGO, if you are listening, these concepts are stuff you should consider for Zelda. You have my email, octane.thermoplastic@gmail.com. Put me a line and we can talk about Easter egg. I can pop over to Denmark, see all those LEGO Zelda sets you are developing. Sounds like fun. I promise I won't say anything, but like, legitimately, not me sarcastic. Does sound like fun though. But I would like to see them. You know, the ones you totally have, right? The full wave of them that you have. But in all seriousness, I would love to see proper sets, better than mine, whether they use my concepts or not. Just like 77092, which is truly an amazing set. Just with that breadth that we have in the CSS and the play sets as well that we have. I would also happily support an official theme in multiple capacities. I'm not saying as LAN, but as an ambassador for LEGO Zelda only, sure. It's honestly not about free sets, as a side note. Interviewing, access to designers, and early images is truly what I would be after with that. And just the chance to do cool stuff that I have tried to make happen, but I wanted to do 900 Koroks, okay? Look, sue me. But we're not owed anything, and what I do is truly just fan art on another level. It's just a little insane. I'm loving what we have, really, and I'm just wishing for more official sets, really. If you do want to know what I'm referring to in terms of interviews, let's just say I had plans, and these plans were stopped by the ambassador organization. So, but it's fine, it's whatever. It's not like other LEGO Zelda people wanted to ask these questions, you know, like it's not like I was offering them a niche, you know, blah, blah, blah. If y'all wanted me to cause some chaos and actually get these interviews and get you the real gossip, then you've got to get these numbers up. And yes, I am being facetious, but it's true. Like, generally, we don't get opportunities without numbers. So if you want to get designer interviews, that is the price, unfortunately. Okay, and then the last big one for today, and this is going to send me off for a while, from Desmond Brown 3985. How are the instructions for your designs on Rubricable generated? Okay, good one. Let's jump into Studio first. It is an amazing package, as I've said before. They keep it up to date and working really, really smoothly, and I'm grateful that it's free and that it's been around for 8 years now, which is crazy. I've been using it for 8 years. Before we talk about the instructions, though, I'm going to quickly give you my tips from all across Studio. Firstly, if you're using a vertical palette layout, why? Change it horizontal. It just shows you more parts at once. Like, seriously, like, why? Like, why would you only see 2 columns? Please, put it horizontal. I don't care if it's less ergonomic or whatever. You just see more. It makes you a more versatile builder. Secondly, don't forget about Parts Designer. That is the companion app that you can download that lets you do stickers and custom molds. It is significantly harder to use than Studio and not as well developed, but it's still cool. And that stuff imports the custom palette down here on the left. Also, while we're down here in the palette, sort your palettes by bricklink categories. Yes, please. I know it's painful in the short term and you understand shapes better, but it is much better for you, especially if you're planning on buying parts through Bricklink because it's the same system. And if you're just starting out with the Lego, it's building good habits. I really, really recommend this one. Bricklink category over shape. It's just more universal. Next, over on the right is your step view. Always watch for yellow triangles here because that means something is wrong. Mostly the parts aren't available in that color. To avoid this, make sure that the only available colors little ticky box is turned on in the color palette up in the top right. Okay, top bar time. Studio hides some useful tools from you, specifically underneath select. There's select by color, select by type, and select by type and color. These are great. They're really useful and do exactly as they say for highlighting certain bits, specifically when you've got a piece that you've decided you wanted one color and then you want to change it to another color. By type and color, you change them all, although that can be risky, but it's whatever. But the most useful one by far is to select by connected. It's my second most used tool in this program besides Clone. I use it so much that I actually keybound it to be, and I recommend this because it selects everything that's connected, and that's great for moving large objects around or highlighting areas rather than drag selection. It also helps you move loose components, stuff that isn't attached by studs but needs to move freely. It also helps you move those around, which is great. Collision is also really important to have on. This test that you aren't doing things that are impossible, but also it's sometimes helpful to turn it off to do impossible things, because sometimes when you move big stuff around in Studio, it can get a little confused. It works out eventually, but it can just try and prioritize weird connections over others. So it can be both helpful to turn it on and then off and then on again. Just make sure it's on most of the time so that you're not doing things that are, as I said, are physically fusing bricks together. Rotate is really useful, and the fine move tool, both of these I have bound, specifically using for moving bricks in bracket intervals, which is super helpful. and this sort of ties into learning Lego maths, which is something that you'll pick up if you build enough in Studio. But it can be useful to do a bit of research in. How I built my skill in Studio is two ways. Watching thousands of speed builds over the last decade. Thank you, Austrian Brick Fan. I'm literally not exaggerating. I've watched so many, but it just exposes you to how building is done, how they're going about techniques, and keeps your mind fresh on how they're using new parts, which is really keen to making sure you're building like they are right now. Secondly, if you're learning and you want to learn about measurements, try to reverse engineer a brickhead's design. It sounds so stupid, but literally go onto Google or Rebrickable, pick an image of a brickhead's mock that's been designed by a fan, not an official set, and try, without buying the instructions, to work out how they build it. Because without looking at like instructions, they're so talented. And if you can work out how they crammed those angles and direction and changes and all to get all those shapes in a 4x4 cube, you're going to learn a lot about bracket offsets and snot in a very short time. And that changes how you think about the Lego system and how to fill in gaps and make your models more compact and just effective in general. Right, back to the toolbar. I promise I'm getting to the instruction question in just a sec. But we also have Snap. In my time, I've never turned Snap off. It should always be on. It's really helpful and it avoids some of the jank that happens when you've got lots of connection points and you're building big, which is something that most of you shouldn't, hopefully, not be doing. Now, as for something you shouldn't use, stability. This is a mode that kind of tricks you into thinking your build will fall apart. It's generally better that you trust your own sense of what Lego can do and gravity and just test things in person than use stability, because it's just a little bit too cautious and obviously is all based off calculations, so it doesn't quite understand, specifically when you get into more advanced building techniques as well. It will really only be useful to show you when a connection is too weak to hold a piece up, but I just don't use it. 9 times out of 10 I'll build in ways I can trust, or if it's something I'm not sure about, I will just fix it in real life and it will work out. But then again, I really don't have too many problems when I transfer to real life, mostly just not supporting sections enough. Most of my stability stuff is generally fine, like nothing's ever fallen over on me. We also have the render tool and the mosaic tool. I know I did not use the mosaic for Champions Art. That was all done by hand, but the mosaic is really useful if you want to make pixel art. The render obviously is a really useful tool. Don't crank it to max settings until you know what your computer can handle and also what you need, because the low sizes are actually still pretty clean. I would advise turning shadows off though. It's easier to add one in other programs, even like stuff like PowerPoint. And most of the time, if I leave shadow on, I just end up cropping out the shadow afterwards, so I just leave it off and it doesn't make a difference for like real world renders. Oh, I missed connect. This is a newer feature. It allows you to connect two studs together by tracing a path. It's particularly useful for big builds, but can cause problems if your assemblies need to be rotated. Have a play around, again, I can't explain everything, but it's really handy for big submodels and I use it in the castle all the time. It's still a little finicky some of the time. Okay, instructions. They are generated by pressing this button. It can do it automatically, but this is not the way to do it. It results in truly awful instructions that don't make sense and are just obnoxious to follow. 99% of the time, yeah, you are better off doing it yourself. Firstly, use the step mode to separate out the parts into steps. Each one of these should be like what you see on a Lego instruction page, so not too many parts and kind of sensible groupings close together. Submodels can have their own part orders as well, which is great because you can nest these just like we see in real models, so you can really simplify stuff out, and truly simpler is better. One step per page is a little much, but maybe 2 or 3, you're fine. But this comes with practice. You've got to get a feel of it after you've sort of tinkered around. Once you've sorted them out, you then go to the page layout tab and do your composition to sort of lay out your pages, like how many steps per page and so on. And there are honestly so many settings here. Most of them are pretty intuitive and you can figure out if you've got experience with software like PowerPoint and Word and other software just in that available publisher, like things like that. And it's a pretty simple learning curve, but it does have some bugs which you have to just sort of kind of coming out of to fix, because Studio is basically no bugs anymore. Instruction Maker is just slightly newer and nothing major really. It's honestly impressive that we even have this resource at all, because it truly does feel like a miracle that I can make my own instructions without having to do just the most awful like screenshot and jobbing at each step and then like composing in like another program. It's just incredible really, like truly a marvelous resource to have. But yeah, you compose, do it how you like. You usually have to go back and change bits from the step order because you'll never usually get it right first time, or like redo a submodel. The hardest thing is to do when you have to do like a multiple of a build, like you do something 3 times, because you have to turn off like the box and add the X2s, which you can do. You can add images and stuff. It's incredibly customizable, really. It's really open, and I was really excited the first time I tried Instruction Maker because it was something I really thought I was going to enjoy, and I do enjoy it. But it's a lot of work. They export as PDFs. They go straight onto Rebrickable. So I hope now people see why it takes so long to make these instructions, because while I enjoy it, it's a lot of work to do in one go. And then obviously I'm trying to make sure that they're logical and they work and that they're IRL tested, these builds. And I do make mistakes. We fix them when we spot them. Sometimes there's rendering bugs as well, but we fix them when we spot them. But that's Studio. I kept it brief, tried to cover a lot of ground. I wouldn't be opposed to doing more in-depth tutorials, but that requires more planning because it's a little bit of a commitment and it's a lot more effort than other content. But I'll do it if you guys want. Just it needs to be a lot of you. Okay. I do also want to touch on Bricklink very briefly, very briefly. There's so much I could go into Bricklink as well. Firstly, you can import a studio file into Bricklink as a wanted list and make the list. Just press plus, then go in and press upload and then select the studio file. This will only work if there are no yellow warnings in the studio file. If you've got those, Bricklink will freak out and just not upload it. Anyways, do it that way. Don't use the upload from studio button because it's faffy and you have to log in and stuff. Just go to Bricklink and upload it that way. You've got the file. Why? Once you have the list, add anything else you need, like specialist parts or anything else that you feel like you fancy, and then you go and press buy all. Do not use the easy buy function. It is not the cheapest way for you to get those parts, and it's not customizable enough. Most of you will want to stay domestic with your orders anyway, so when you press buy all, just change the search results from global to your country, and never settle for the first store that's at the top of the list with unique parts. Check the first couple down the list, see the relative costs of the baskets, because a couple of stores per country do tend to overcharge, and you get a good idea for who that is. But yeah, just have a look, see, oh, they're all selling $74.75 of my parts. This one's £20 cheaper. Why? No idea. Pick the one that's cheaper. And yeah, just pick the stores until you've got all the parts you need. See if there's any you can exclude or any you can replace with cheaper parts. The more effort you put in, generally speaking, the cheaper your Bricklink will get. But shipping kills, obviously, because the more stores you have to go to, they all ship from different locations. But that's why you try and minimize it and you play clever. Which leads me to more complex things like how to prioritize rare parts to get your store count down, to use favorited store systems to streamline buying from multiple lists. But it's just too much and BL hurts. Always check BAP, I guess, as well. And you never know what's going to be easier to find on Lego.com. And if you need enough parts to get you over the service fee, it could be worth just placing through for Bricks and Pieces itself. I mean, it's all the same company, you know, it's like, it's whatever. Yeah, Bricklink's a mess. It's another one that it's very complicated. And again, the more effort you put in them and the more work you do, the cheaper you'll be able to get your orders. But there is a ceiling in a sense. And it's just it's an awful website really, but it's the only one we've got and it does serve a thing and it is good at what it does. It just, it grinds my gears. Enough. No more. That's all the advice I have and brings the video to a close. Hopefully you felt this answered your questions. As always, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and if there's anything else you want to ask or things you found in the video that were outrageous. If you got to the end of the video, do leave me something that proves you got here, because I did this for you guys. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and maybe it's podcast-like, maybe it's not. I really don't know how much editing is going to be on here. But yeah, leave your questions, thoughts on anything I said, and opinions down below, and I will see you on Friday, as this was a special video, for another video. And take care. Have a good life.